Assalamualaikum and a very good day. So now we come to another part of my lecture, Project Management. I'm Azin Awal and thank you Fatima Abdul Karim for preparing the slide. So this part of the lecture is referred to practice, Chapter 7 Budget Project. This lecture is prepared for students CPE520 Project Management. Some part of the video has been posted in my YouTube channel, which is the methods of budgeting. So another part of this covering cost estimating, improving cost estimate, budget uncertainty and risk. So cost estimating. So in this section, we will look into the process of estimating the cost and some dangers of randomly cutting the project budget. At the end of this cost estimation also, we would be able to differentiate between activity budgeting and program budgeting. So we look into what is work element costing. Work element costing is the task of building a budget. It is normally straightforward, but it is tedious. Okay? Each work element is evaluated for its resource requirement and then its costs are then being determined. So work element costing difference between every organization. In some organization, the project manager adds the overhead charges to the budget. In others, the labor, time and material are just sent to the accounting department and they run the numbers, add the appropriate overhead and total the cost. Although overhead was charged here against direct labor, more recent accounting practices such as activity-based costing may charge portions of the overhead against other cost drivers such as machine time, weight of raw materials or total time to the project completion. Okay. So how do work element costing being done? We will calculate the fully costed or estimate the price of fully costed task, which is the estimate price of the task. It is equals to the direct cost for labor plus machinery plus resources, which is materials, plus overhead charges and GSA charges. What are the GSA? General, sales and administrative charges. Okay. The full cost budget is then used by accounting to estimate the profit to be earned by the project. Direct resource costs such as materials, machinery needed solely for a particular project are usually charged to the project without an overhead or add-on. So on top of this, there is often a charge for general, sales and administrative costs that includes upper management, staff function, sales and marketing, plus any other costs which is not included in the overhead charges. GSA may be charged as a percentage of direct costs, all direct and indirect costs, or on other bases including total time to completion. So what do project manager do in work element costing? Project manager then will construct a budget of direct costs for his or her own use. This budget provides the information required to manage the project without being confounded with costs over which he or she has no control. Note that the overhead charges and GSA effect can result in a severe penalty when a project runs late. Therefore, it will be a significant amount of an unexpected cost to the project. Okay, work element costing. So what do PM have to understand with this work element costing? Okay, and how it works in the organization's accounting system. We take an example of the Pennsylvania that being given a contract to construct Limerick nuclear power plant in 1980s. So in the contract, they included an incentive fee provision. So what are these provisions stated? These provisions stated that any saving that resulted from finishing the project early would be split between the state and the contractor. As a result of this provision, the contractor worked extra hard to make sure that the project completed earlier, and they did. They completed the project 8 months ahead of its 49 months due date. And they save about 400 million out of the 3.2 billion budget, and they split up this 400 million between themselves. Okay. So, from the case above, I wanted you to write a simple answer or submit your answer in a role of PM in understanding organization accounting system. So, you need to write a simple answer for role of PM in understanding organization's accounting system. It has to be an individual project. Okay, next we look into improving cost estimates, budget uncertainty, and risk management. Okay, how do we improve cost estimation? Okay, improving the process of cost estimation, there are two fundamental different ways to manage the risk. The most common is to make an allowance for contingency, or another one is to select most likely optimistic or pessimistic estimates. Okay. Types. First, we need to identify the types of estimation error. There are two types of estimation error: bias and also random error. In order for us to improve the cost estimation, so the bias error is a systematic error where the chance of overestimating and underestimating are not likely to be equal. Whereas the random error is where overestimates and underestimates are likely to be equal. Okay, so the impacts of budget cuts, for example, during budgeting, why budget estimate is not equal to the actual requirement. There are three reasons why this happened, why the estimate is not equal to the actual requirement. The jobs always look easier, faster, and cheaper to the boss than to the person who has to do them. Okay, the bosses are usually optimistic and never admit that details have been forgotten or that anything can or will go wrong. Subordinates are naturally pessimistic and want to build in protection for everything that might possibly go wrong. Okay, so the bosses having the best case scenarios, and the subordinates always having the worst case scenarios in their mind. Okay, next we look into funding non-profitable projects. Why do people fund for non-profitable project? There are several reasons that firms would choose to fund a project that is not profitable. What? Because this is to develop knowledge of the technology. They are willing to do that in order to get advancement in the knowledge, even though that project would give them any profit. The second one is to get the organization foot in the door so that people in the industry network will know them. This is for future benefits, okay, to obtain the parts or service portion of the work. Okay, so they are creating a reputation so that they will get parts in the future work. Okay, to be in a good position for follow-on contract. Again, a reputation. Okay. To improve improve a competitive position so that they are known to be there even though the project is not profitable. Okay? To broaden a product line or a line of business. Okay, so besides having those advantages, there are issues in funding non-profitable projects. Okay, non-profits have greater limitations when it comes to accessing lines of credit and having positive cash flow. So a limit in accessing the funds. Okay, so other issues are ability to recruit and maintain talent, because non-profit has limit budgets. They are less to have the possible chance for the staff to go for career growth or award system or compensations. Okay, so succession planning. Many non-profits are led by rotating boards, and it is difficult to maintain consistency in approach. Okay, so it is difficult to have a continuous planning because of changings of the top management. So other issues are infrastructure. Due to the limitations on finance, many non-profits are not able to invest in the systems needed to streamline the operations. Internal policies. Some non-profits are plagued with significant interpersonal issues due to internal politics, and these issues are not only hurting relationships but also make it extremely difficult to define a unified strategy for the organizations. Okay, so we'll look into an iterative budgeting process. This is the steps usually taken by the managers in estimating, so that from this estimation can create a proper budgeting planning, a proper budget planning. Okay, normally step toward reducing the difference between superiors and subordinates. What do they do is that the superior agree to educate the subordinate in the realities of the job. The superior agree to be educated by the subordinate. Okay, so they have to lower their ego. The subordinate is encouraged by the superior positive response and surrenders some of the protection and budgetary slope. So they are more agreeable to the budget that they work together with the superior. But this is a time-consuming process, okay, for the project manager because they have several subordinates. So now we look into the types of budgeting. Activity budgeting versus program budgeting. Okay. Normally, traditionally, organizations opt for activity budgeting, whereby they normally have line-by-line activities mapped to the budgeting. Okay. Eventually, the activity budgeting, because of some of the problems arise from the activity budgeting, organization move towards the program budget. So we look into traditional budgeting methods. So the budgets are split up among many different organizational units, okay, because it is based on activities. Because of that, the project manager or top management have less control of the budget because budget are being split up. Due to this problem, program budgets is developed to alter the process, okay, whereby budgets are not assigned to activity but budget are assigned to the programs. So, program budgeting, the definition is the budget prepared with program description instead of expense line items. Instead of just activity, it is based on program. Okay. Normally, program budgeting aggregates income and expenditure across the program or the project. Okay. Program or project budget shows expenses by task and time period. program budgets are then aggregated by reporting unit. So this is example of program budgeting. Program budget by task and mind. You can see this is the outline or the split up of the task. Okay, the start and end. Okay, the estimation of the cost are split up among the months. Okay, these budgets usually take the form of a spreadsheet with standard categories disaggregated into regular operations and charges to the various projects. Okay, so improving cost estimates. There are many ways to improve cost estimation, but we'll look into two forms. Okay, two techniques, which is learning curve and tracking signals. Okay, but these improvements are not restricted to cost estimates only. This technique, learning curves and tracking signal, is not restricted to cost estimation. It can be applied to other measured numerical aspects of the project, which is such as task duration, the time to which specialized personnel will be required, losses associated with specific types of risk that should be occurred. So, improving cost estimate. Most estimates are in error. Why? Because of simple reasons. Example of reason is not using available tools or not using common sense, failing to allow for problems and contingencies, having to replace workers midstream, behavioral and organizational reasons such as informal incentive systems that reward inaccurate estimates. Okay? So, improving cost estimates forms. This can be considerable help to the project manager in obtaining accurate estimates, not only of direct costs, but also when the resource is needed. How many are needed, who should be contacted, and if it will be available when is needed. The information can be collected for each task on an individual form and then aggregated for the project as a whole. So, one type of improving cost estimation is using forms. So, we can see clearly here what are needed, when are needed, and who are needed. Okay. Now we look into improving cost estimation using learning curve. Studies have shown that human performance improves when tasks are repeated. Okay, so if one task is being done twice, the performance will be improved by certain percentage. Okay, so if the task is being done repeatedly, the output will be double or triple, and the worker hours will be increased. This is what we call a learning rate. Okay, project management should take the curve into account for any task where level is significant. So these are the example on learning curves. Okay. So in general, it has been found that unit performance improves by a fixed percentage each time the total production quantity doubles. Specifically, each time the outputs double, the worker hours per unit decrease by a fixed percentage of their previous values. This percentage is called learning rate, and typically values run between 70 to 95%. The higher values are for more mechanical tasks, while the lower, faster learning values are for more mental tasks such as solving problems. A common rate in manufacturing is 80%. Okay. Next, we look into improving cost estimate technique, which is tracking signal. People do not seem to learn by experience, no matter how much they urge others to do so. Project managers and others involved with projects spend much time estimating activity costs and durations, among many others. There are two types of error in those estimates: random error and systematic errors. Error caused by bias that we looked into before. So what are random errors and systematic errors? Random errors, as the name implied, lead to measurable values being inconsistent. Okay? When repeated measures of constant attribute or quantity are taken. The word random indicates that they are inherently unpredictable and have a null expected value, namely they are scattered above the true value. Okay? While systematic errors are predictable and typically constant or proportion to the true values. Okay? Normally, the systematic error can be identified and can usually be eliminated. Okay? So, improving cost estimates tracking signal. So each business has its forecast model to provide the forecast. However, forecasters need to monitor a forecast to determine when it might be advantageous to change or update the model. A tracking signal provides a method for doing this by quantifying bias. The most frequently used tracking method is to compute the cumulative forecast error divided by the value of mean absolute deviation at that point in time. So these are examples of the calculation of tracking signal. What is the importance of cost estimates to project manager? So knowing this can then be quite helpful to a project manager in making future estimates or on the critically important task of judging the quality of estimate by others. I want you to answer these questions and write a simple paragraph and answer it by today. So, other factors that causing project failure. Okay? Project failure is when they couldn't meet their time, plan, cost budgeted or specification of the scopes. So, common cause of the project failure is arbitrary and impossible goals, very random and impossible goals. Scope creep, wildly optimistic estimates in order to influence the project selection process. Changes in resource prices, failure to include an allowance of waste and spoilage. Sometimes it's just bad luck. So, the causes approach, or we'll look into the causes and approaches, or the causes and situation. First, changes in resources prices. So, what are the approaches can project manager do? Managerial project to this problem is to increase all cost estimates by some fixed percentage to give some buffer so that to encounter for changes in the resources prices. Okay? Other approach is to identify each input that has a significant impact on the cost and to estimate the rate of price change for each one. Okay? Next, cost is overlooking the need to factor into the estimated cost and adequate allowance for waste and spoilage. So the approach is to determine the individual rates of waste and spoilage for each task rather than use some fixed percentage in average. A similar problem is not adding an allowance for increased personnel costs due to loss and replacement of skilled project team members. Not only will new members go through a learning period which increases the time and cost of the relevant task, a professional salary usually increases faster than the general average. Okay? Brooks' mythical man effect. So, this effect is that when we hire a worker, training is needed for this new worker. This type of informal training given by the current worker will then reduce the capacity of the current worker. Okay, so this will hinder the project time and also will increase the cost. The third one is behavioral possibility. The project cost estimator gives a more optimistic picture than reality warrants. Okay. So because of the excitement to get a project to be approved, sometimes this happens, misses the profit goals. Okay, for example, late on a major delivery to an important customer and paid a huge penalty. This will definitely hurt our budget. 5. The fifth is probabilistic element in most projects. For example, projects such as writing software require that every element work 100% correctly for the final product to perform to specifications. In programming software, if there are 1000 lines of code and each line has a 0.999 probability of being accurate, the likelihood of the final program working is only about 37%. Okay, so sometimes it's just bad luck. So the wise PM should include allowances for unexpected contingency, some buffers to the to the budget. Some managers randomly cut carefully prepared time and cost estimates. This is very bad situation where it should not happen. Okay, this is not an effective management process. Overrun. Estimates of the initial project scope, typically of government projects, and lack of control, particularly costs, including conflicts of interest between the public and private sectors. I think we've got enough information. Okay, so we have plenty of time, and I would suggest you guys to open the reference books and look around and do some of the exercises in the reference book. So look into the summary of our chapter. The intent of a budget is to communicate organizational policy concerning the organization's goals and priorities. There are a number of common budgeting methods: top-down, bottom-up, and the program budget. Firms will fund projects whose returns cover direct but not full costs in order to achieve long-run strategic goals of the organization. If projects include repetitive tasks with significant human input, the learning phenomenon should be taken into consideration when preparing cost estimates. The learning curve is based on the observation that the amount of time required to produce one unit decreases a constant percentage every time the output doubles. Okay, with that, thank you so much.